Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are your award-winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast, and we are back, a Sunday edition for you of Last Word on Spurs. Hopefully close you off for the weekend ahead of what we know is going to be an absolutely huge period for Spurs. As we know, games are coming thick and fast. 2 to 3 days of constant games in our life as being Spurs fans. So please do be concerned if I look anxious, I look worried, I look scared. I'm just a Spurs fan. We're going to try and generate and produce and bring all these shows. Look, we're joined by 3 absolute cracking guests, 2 returning, 1 making their debut. What a time to be making your debut on Last Word on Spurs. But before we bring in our debutant, let's bring in a couple of returning guests to Last Word on Spurs, 1 becoming fairly regular, 1 we hope to be more regular throughout the course of this season. Mitch Fretton is back on the panel. Mitch, you're smiling. It means Spurs have had a good weekend so far.
It certainly does. I noticed myself on the intro when we were brought in as well on a little video intro. So I'm moving up in the world, Ricky. But yeah, really great to be back on the show, especially after a Spurs win, one that we really needed. So yeah, everything's been pretty good, I would say, in terms of football over the course of the weekend. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to just chatting Tottenham, even if there are games every few days. I know it's stressing you out, but for me, I'm loving it. So I'm looking forward to chatting about it and hopefully talking about how we're going to win the next 7, 8, 9, 10 games in a row.
Oh, listen, I hope you're right, mate. From your mouth to God's ears, that's for certain. For your mouth to God's ears. Back on the show. Look, I think it's fair to say we've been having a lot of communication behind the scenes, and I think we can all safely say we cannot wait. And excited as we are about Spurs' future, for some out there, we're so excited to see the return regularly of the superb, the brilliant, the amazing Sean Butler on our scenes. The Spurs community is waiting for Sean over, of course, at the Spurs Talk Show. We're blessed with his presence tonight. Sean, thank you so much for your time, mate. Lovely to have you back on here, and we can't wait for more of you to come.
Mate, you are the nicest guy with the nicest words. Every time I speak to you, I feel embarrassed by how many superlatives you throw my way. They're so undeserved, but I really appreciate it. It's great to be back. Great to meet the other 2 as well. And yeah, it's been a long time. To be honest, guys, I feel like I haven't missed too much. And then the first game that I had a proper chance to watch, Tottenham play really well and everything's back on track. You know, I feel like I missed out on the worst part of Tottenham's sort of summer, early season. So only good things to come. And I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me as always, Ricky.
Bless you, my man. Absolute pleasure. And thank you so much again for those very kind words back to me. I will introduce you to my wife and I'll let you fill her in on that for certain. We do love her. We do. We most certainly do. Bless her heart. She's amazing. I wouldn't be without her. I'm going into some kind of speech now. We don't need that. Not yet anyway, this early on. Making up our panel. Delighted to give a debut out on Last Word on Spurs. Look, at this time and matters, we need people with calm heads, with rationality, that are bringing sense to the table. Whenever I see this man's takes on X, I just think, yep, he's nailing it. The audience are loving it. It's my pleasure to welcome Simon Yemane to Last Word on Spurs. Simon, bringing you in. Thank you so much for your time. How are you?
I'm great. I'm fabulous, even. I'm humbled and pleased and a little bit starstruck to be here with you, Ricky. I mean, who would have thought a small African / would be able to be on a podcast like this? I'm very pleased and happy to be.
Oh, bless you, mate. You're too kind. Listen, absolute pleasure to have you in. Like I say, there is nothing better than, I think, when you've got 4 people, whoever they are, male, female, talking about Tottenham and where we are right now, because I think it's fair to say that Ange was delighted by that weekend result against, of course, the opponents for Spurs, in which, to be fair to some degree, against Brentford, they really took them to town. I think many were really concerned by the opening 26 seconds. I think all of us thought, oh my God, not the start we wanted at all. But then what was quite interesting, Mitch, to bring you in, is that Ange revealed after the game, it's exactly who we want to be for that 3-1 win against Brentford. And after a mixed start to the campaign, let's be honest about it, you know, when you look at the fact we went into that game with, dare I say, a little bit of pressure, it felt heaping on the horizon. I think Ange had been quite prickly in his presser beforehand. What were your main takeaways from a game in which, really, despite the early blow, we respond ever so well? Goals for Dominic Solanke, Brennan Johnson, James Maddison ensuring the 3 points. Main takeaways for you, Mitch, in terms of that result?
Yeah, just I think overall it was a good performance. For me, the big problem for me with Tottenham this season so far has been that we've been struggling to get the right players on the ball in the right areas of the pitch in the final third. And for me, the big difference I saw in the game against Brentford is that we were having those chances that we haven't necessarily had so far this season. You know, Solanke was having chances in the box. James Maddison was having chances in the box. Brennan Johnson, Son, Kulusevski, all of these players were notably in the correct positions, and they were having shots, whether they were on or off target, or they were getting blocked, or whatever they may be. And for me, that is the big takeaway from that Brentford game, is the fact that, yes, okay, we probably could have scored another 3 or 4 goals in that game. But the fact that we are now progressing from, you know, playing crosses into the box and finding absolutely no one, like we saw against Coventry in midweek, to now actually finding the players that we need to in that box, that for me is a sign of progress. And that for me, and I'm sure we might get into it at some point in a little bit, there are a lot of tactical tweaks that Ange made for this game against Brentford, which I think worked really, really well, particularly with Destiny Udogie not playing that inverted role. So, you know, for everybody out there that's been saying, you know, asking for his head and having his head in a chopping block, I think he proved to a lot of people that he isn't just a one-trick pony, and he does have a few other things up his sleeve. So we saw a bit of versatility from Ange. That's a key takeaway. We saw players getting into the correct positions and having those chances. And most importantly, Ricky, we scored 3 goals, and we, you know, were the better team, even though we did make it difficult for ourselves. But I don't think me or you will go the rest of our years without Tottenham forever making it difficult for themselves. So, you know, a lot of key positive takeaways, I would say, from the game.
Yeah, listen, I do agree on that point. Simon, bringing you in, look, amid the early struggles, I mean, as I said, Ange absolutely loved what he saw from his Spurs side. And I think, you know, we're seeing what he wants from a Tottenham side in terms of that action, relentless pressing, creation of chances, and having a goal scorer up front in Dominic Solanke. We hope there's, of course, more goals to come from him. And quite interestingly, I know one of the big takeaways for Ange and what has been mentioned actually after the game is that Spurs, they created 3.51 XG, the most they've created in the Premier League since the 4-1 win versus Newcastle back in December of 2023. How would you describe that display for you when at a time, someone before the game, there were some question marks maybe around if there was full buy-in from some of the players? Because I think for me, that game showed me that was eradication from the team out there. They were fully 100% playing and buying into the way Ange Postecoglou wants his Spurs side to play.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably the biggest takeaway. I mean, I think I talk a lot about, well, let me start here. After the game, Ange mentioned in a couple of interviews about how he thought we were relentless. And I think that word is so on point, so on brand. I talk a lot about stuff like intensity, urgency, bravery, confidence when I talk about handball, because it's so important to fully believe and to fully go out there for 90 minutes and give you all in this high-pressing, high-intensity way of playing. And to do that, you have to have buy-in, and you can't question what we're trying to do. And stuff like, different types of teams shouldn't affect how we play. We have to stick to our principles. And yesterday was probably one of the best performances I've seen under Ange, because we met a team that's very well adapted at playing in a way that we often struggle with. Basically playing a back 5, sitting deep and waiting to counter. And despite this, we performed extremely well in the final third in terms of chance creation. So I think we had 23 shots. Next year, as you said, 3.5. We had less possession, not because we were worse, but because we were braver on the ball. We were willing to play it forward. We were willing to play it between lines and to find those plays in the half spaces. And when you do that, you're going to lose the ball sometimes. But then we were really quickly winning it back. And so it's all about that energy and that intensity. And I thought we saw that for the full 90 minutes yesterday.
Yeah, I do agree. I mean, like I say, it's interesting you bring that into point there in terms of the domination, Simon, because I bring Sean in there. You know, Spurs had 48% possession during that game. And it's quite funny, that's the least they've had in the Premier League since the 3-3 draw versus Man City. And that was a 45% possession stat on the 3rd of December of 2023. Yet Spurs dominated, you've got to say, Brentford in so many key areas in that game, which was an absolute pleasure to see. And, you know, Spurs, they attempted in the end, they had an attempt of 17 shots at goal. They recovered the ball 33 times and just kept flying forward towards really the shell shot visitors. And in the end, it finished with, as we know, for Tottenham in general, 33 shots at goal as a whole, with, of course, they had 10 of them on target. And I think, what was interesting after the game was there was an admission from Thomas Frank, Sean, that they just simply couldn't live with the way Spurs had that relentless nature about them. And that was despite the fact of falling behind. So I know at a time where in your life, bless you, Spurs hasn't always been the main focus at the moment. How pleasing is it to be able to come back in and see that it does feel that things are settling down? And dare I say, that could be the perfect springboard now to really get Spurs' season back on track.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I've been keeping an eye sort of loosely on the kind of the way that the fan base has been over the last couple of months with the season, with the transfer window finishing up and how the season started. Not obviously as we all would have hoped. However, what I saw yesterday was a team that looked, and again, you have to sort of bear in mind that this is the first time I've really examined Tottenham with the same sort of scrutiny as probably we all have normally. I saw a team that believes in the system. I saw a team that is 100% understanding now, I believe, of the orders of Ange, which until now, last season specifically, I thought there was a lot of, and this wasn't necessarily a problem because I was always willing to give him enough time to figure it out, but I felt like there was a slight abdication of responsibility from Ange in the way that the tactics sort of left his head and then was interpreted by the players. I felt like it was kind of rigid fluidity. The rigid part was his framework of how the game should be played, but the fluid part was kind of, well, how that looks on the pitch, you leave it up to yourself outside of the fact that the fullbacks invert and we always move forward. I think that what I saw yesterday was some adaptation of that. And I think that the adaptation in and of itself, I mean, I've been meaning to put a video out saying the exact same thing I'm going to say now for ages, but I haven't got around to doing it. I think that all it would have taken for there's no manager, no team in the Premier League who can catch another team out by having a plan B than Tottenham. If you do it once, if you had something different up your sleeve once, the team that you're playing against that week would be caught off guard because there's no team that's been more predictable in how they set up than Tottenham. And once you do it once, it's then therefore always going to be in the back of the mind of an opposing manager. And I think yesterday's performance showed that we do have some level of a plan B whilst keeping within the framework. And I don't think it was handed over to the players to figure out how that looked. I think it was by design by Ange. And to me, that is the most positive thing outside of the 3 goals, outside of Dominic Solanke getting on the score sheet, brilliant for him. Outside of Johnson, sort of 2-2 now for him. Lots of positives, and James Maddison. Obviously, I'm sure we're going to talk about all this stuff. Lots of positives throughout the team and the performance. But for me, what I'm taking away from it is that I'm happy to see that there is there has been some adaptations that are manager led and specific, and I think now it will give every manager we're coming up against in the near term, at least, something more to think about when it comes to the 3 or 4 days before playing Tottenham. Are they going to have the fullbacks slightly wider? Are they going to sit a little bit deeper in the midfield and protect? Are they going to do those things? If they are, then we have to focus on or practice for that as well as the natural Tottenham that we've come to learn. And that's something I think is a valuable takeaway from the 3 points.
I'm really glad you brought that up, actually, Sean, in terms of the responsibility and the way in which Spurs are operating, because, you saw in that game, of course, against Brentford, the way the captain and the vice-captains combined for the killer goal, and Postecoglou really embraced both Son and Romero together in a bear hug on the pitch after the game. And, there's been a lot of talk out there that Ange doesn't adapt. There's been, obviously, Spurs in that game defending in a 4-3-3 while they're in a mid-low block, this into accommodate the likes of Maddison and Kulu. And I think many would say they call that adapting. They do call that adapting. And again, just to give you a bit of a touch in terms of where Spurs are at, in terms of some of the stats out there. I know stats don't dictate everything, but they dictate a huge amount of maybe how people are feeling other than the eye test. While Spurs are currently in the early season table, mid-table, you'll see they currently sit top for everything else in terms of average possession, 63.2, crosses, 126, first in terms of passing into penalty area, 71, shots on target being 33, being first, and touches in the final third, an overwhelming 1,267. So, look, Mitch, I'm very conscious that stats aren't everything. Maybe you can use them as an indicator to where you want to be and how you want to get there. But does that stats kind of give you the inkling that Spurs are getting there. It is just a case that when he's had to ship out so many players from an outgoing perspective, and then again, you're bringing players in from a youthful element to it where you are going to get inconsistencies. This is going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight. And maybe just to, again, bring that balance to the show, I think there will be harder and tougher days ahead apart from Brentford, and we're going to have to deal with that as a fan base if we ultimately do want this to work. Is that fair, me suggesting that, Mitch?
I think, to be honest with you, Ricky, it's the main sort of message that I try and get across to people when I talk to those that are maybe doubting the manager or maybe not as supportive of him as I am trying to be. I came into this season fully with the mindset that there are going to be rough days, as you've just mentioned, and that you just have to sit there and you have to accept it sometimes. Like, look, at the end of the day, we all hated losing the North London derby last week, but ultimately Arsenal are miles ahead in their project than us. But how do we expect to get there and to get to that level and get to that stage of that project if we're just rotating managers and changing things massively behind the scenes every 1 or 2 years? We've got to remember, Ange has only had a season in charge. Like, it's barely any time in the grand scheme of things. And when you go from having Mourinho and Conte and Nuno, and then you change the style of play so drastically, and everybody always seems to forget that we lost Harry Kane last summer and Ange came in and he's had to start from scratch from there. He has taken the opportunity to perhaps play without a player that maybe wouldn't fit that type of system, the high intensity, the high pressing. You know, I don't think we would see Harry Kane doing the running work like Dominic Solanke does for us when we haven't got the ball. So, you know, naturally, that's going to take time to get right and get used to. I think we've definitely seen glimpses and we've seen extended periods of the season, particularly last season, where we have been really good in the way that Ange wants us to play. So I think ultimately, Ricky, mate, my point is, I would argue that Tottenham probably have the most impatient fan base of the league, of the country, and I completely understand why. Like, I'm completely there with everyone else when it comes to that. Like, I want to see us win something as much as everybody else that supports Tottenham. Like, there's no denying that whatsoever. But you don't just turn up and win something, and you especially don't turn up and win something when you're turning on the manager who has shown us that we can be a very good team at times, but you're not willing to then give him that time to fully build what he wants to build. You got to bear in mind that the signings that we've signed over the last season and a half, and Solanke in particular, I think this summer, he is an Ange Postecoglou player. He is a reflection of what Ange Postecoglou embodies in terms of football philosophy. So what's the point in bringing him in, spending £65 million on him, to then, as soon as we start going through another rough patch, say, that's it, I've had enough? Like, ultimately, I've seen people sitting there on social media and I'm saying, oh yeah, we should get Thomas Tuchel in, or we should get Xavi from Barcelona in, or whatever it may be. But I mean, is that realistically the decision that you would want to make? And are we not just then going to find ourselves in the same position when that doesn't work a couple of years down the line? We just have to be patient. And I know people are sick of hearing that. I know they are. Yep. But it's been a year. It's been a year, mate. Like, that's not enough time to get up to that level and compete with the likes of Arsenal and City and Liverpool. It's just not. Like, you know.
I mean, I'm not going to lie to you, Mitch. I'm probably one of those that is very impatient and does want more and wants the standards to be set. I mean, Simon, look, whenever I see you on X, I think your takes are very much measured and articulate. And I think many look at that and are really nodding their head to a lot of what you say. Question for you, Simon. How do you ask a fan base that are nearly 2 decades on from winning something to be patient? How can you do that when it does feel there's been so many inconsistencies over the last however many years? And again, we are going through a young squad here that is 100% going to take time to settle. And with young players, as you know, Simon, means there is inconsistency. So can you understand the impatience of some of the fan base, if that's fair?
I mean, I'm 100% with fans. And I'm also really respected towards fans that have season tickets and pay a lot more every week than I do sitting at home paying for cable, or fans that have been there for every downturn. That's my alarm. Time to eat. Been there for every downturn. Or
I'll just double check, Simon. That's not an alarm that a trophy's in close to us, is it? That's not an alarm. That's not a trophy dodger alarm, is it? Just double checking.
That's a trophy alarm.
I thought you mentioned the word trophy there. I was like an alert, a ball.
Don't say trophy. You're a Spurs fan. No, what I was going to say is I'm really respectful towards people having different perspectives, different experiences, different levels of commitment in how they follow this club. I mean, I usually use this metaphor when I say, don't punish your new girlfriend for your ex cheating on you. With that, what I mean with that is we have a new coach, we have a new director of football, we have a new way of recruiting, we have new players, a new squad. And when I talk about this project, you often hear about people say, you often get responses in terms of it's been a 20-year project. And while I understand that perspective, that's not, to me, intellectually honest. We have to give this era post this new stadium, we have to look at it in a different way than we did in an era where maybe other stuff was going on in terms of context, in terms of circumstances. And I'm not saying eradicate that part of you, of that part of your self that had that frustration, but as Mitch said, you know, only leaning on that and only looking at that is not a fair way of judging the people in charge and the players in place now. And so I hear Sean talk about adjustments and Mitch talking about the project, and I get really happy because clearly people do understand what's going on. But projects and processes come with struggles. And it's easy for us now sitting behind the wind and talking about this. It's a process. It's a product that needs time. But when you really need to remember it is when we don't succeed, when we don't score, when we lose games, and when it doesn't feel comfortable to think about, you know, having patience. And so, like Sean brings up a really good point about adjustments and making changes. The way I looked at it is, anytime I try to get better at anything, learn a new language or get stronger or lose weight, you hit these plateaus where you learn the basics. And when you get to this next level, you have new challenges that comes towards you, and they might make you fail. And the only way to get through that, you know, rough path is by not changing directions, but going straight into the fire. And so, to me, I always looked at it as, okay, this first year, we need to learn the basics. We need to play out from the back. We need to bed in these really young players. We need to change our mindset in the way we play.
Yep. And
with that comes ups and downs. And now other teams have figured out that, okay, Spurs have a lot of possession. Let's sit deep. Let's counter. And so now we need to learn this new skill with new players like Dominic Solanke and Kulusevski in the midfield. And that comes with new challenges. And that's not just going to work. And that's a new process and a new level that you need to kind of adapt to. So I see a lot of progress when I take a step back and not focus on the stuff that are not working, but rather looking at where we were a year ago from now, where we have taken more points, we're high on the table, we dominate possession, we play in the way that we like, we're a much younger squad. I can count in big picture ways we've changed for the better. So I know it's hard, but I think it's much more healthy to kind of look at it that way.
I think some really fair points there. I mean, Sean, in a way, this is a great question to ask you because you haven't been, as what all of us have been, absolutely mentally kind of, where are we? What's happening? What's going on? Yeah. What's been your take, Sean, more outside looking in about the pressure that the manager's been under from some parts of the fan base? Not all the fan base, because that would be unfair me saying that, but has that been warranted? Has that been fair? Is that right? I mean, what's been your take on it? Because again, the reason why I love having you on here, mate, and you know, it feels like it's been a lot longer than just a second time here. We always age people on the show. You'll realise that, Sean, by your 10th time, you would have aged God knows how many years on this bloody show. But has that been fair for you, the criticism of the manager? Because he has been quite prickly in recent weeks, where it feels that he himself knows that, whether rightly or wrongly, there is an expectation there. But again, as Mitch says, it is only, you know, he's just over 13, 14 months in the job here.
Yeah, listen, I 100% agree with both of the previous lads' comments there. I've been of the mindset that, despite how you feel about Daniel Levy and our ownership, I'm someone that has generally kind of given the guy a little bit more sort of rope and time or found ways to justify his actions than other areas of the fan base. But however you feel about him and his tenure, the 25 years and one trophy narrative doesn't fit Ange. As Mitch was saying, Ange hasn't been here 25 years. He's only had a year. You have to especially when it comes to the situation we're in, the transition that was necessary, the kind of pivoting from, all over the place in terms of tactics and managerial pursuits to a new philosophy, a new ethos. You have to let that, for me, have a little bit more time than you would otherwise give any manager, simply because of what we were leaving behind and what we're pivoting to, which is so alien to what the recent Tottenham system is. Alien to any team. Like his system, his philosophy is, unorthodox to football in 2024. And so you have to, again, give that a little bit more time. Another factor why it justifies that a little bit more patience is because of the age profile of the way we're going about our acquisitions. These players don't have 10 years of footballing experience at the highest level behind them, where they're used to playing a number of different systems and they're used to maybe doing things outside of their wheelhouse. And so because we're going after 18, 19-year-olds, because that's the philosophy of the football club, those players, whilst they might be full of fresh ideas and willing to adapt, are going to have to go through a process that will benefit them probably far more than it will benefit Tottenham in the initial stages when it comes to their careers. But so for all of those reasons, I think that you do have to give Ange enough time. And for the same reasons that I would argue in Ange's defense, his system hasn't failed him wherever he's gone. So if you are someone in your own life who has always succeeded at whatever your thing is, then if it isn't broke, don't fix it, is a fair philosophy to abide by. Time will tell whether or not it is, in fact, the right system for this level. I personally would argue, like I said in my first answer, that whilst I'm 100% behind Ange, until yesterday's game, I haven't seen much evidence of the how do I say this? I think that you're asking a lot of a group of players that are of such a young age, who are going through so much transition, in so much education in a new system, to also have to fill in the gaps in the sort of strategic element where its framework is rigid, but the kind of execution of it is fairly liberal. And Ange, until now, has kind of said, well, how that, at least is the way I see it, how you go about executing the football is over to you guys, but stick to this main kind of ideology. That, to me, is a little bit kind of lazy. And so I would expect the guy whose job it is to be a little bit more tactically. If you are the kind of father of the philosophy, then you should be the guy who's filling in the blanks and allowing Christian Romero to take it upon himself to venture forward whenever he thinks that it's necessary. James Maddison to come and sit deep and therefore not be in the right places at the right time. Like all of those things that seem to be sort of player driven rather than by the manager, I've been frustrated with. So I think you do have to give him a bit more time than you would otherwise give any other manager, given the kind of variables that are at play. But I also think that until yesterday, there are criticisms that can be made around Ange's how he has approached his own version of football. But yesterday I saw something that was clearly by design and it was different. And like I said in my first answer, I think that demonstrates more to me in a positive tick than the 3 points ever could. That I think that there is now going to be something that we can move forward with, that he must feel confident that the ethos is now embedded, and now he can start to embed the things that he spoke about at the start of last season when we were 10 games in, and he said, I can now accelerate and kind of amplify the part where I can start to sprinkle a few more ideas in because we're ahead of where we were. Obviously, everything fell apart then, but I feel like now maybe we're back to that stage in his mind, and that to me is exciting and reasons to, again, be optimistic.
Yeah, listen again, Sean. I've got to say on this show, some really amazing points made in the first half. Now, what we are going to do, we are going to squeeze in our first break of the show for our listeners and audio. We've got nearly over 3,500, 4,000 of you joining us live as always. Thank you so much for your incredible support for Last Word on Spurs. We are joined by debutant Simon Yemane, debuting on this edition of Last Word on Spurs, and we're joined by Mitch Fretton, a returning regular face on Last Word on Spurs, and for sure he'll be busy with us during the season. And we're hoping this man will be busy as well with us. Like I say, we are missing him greatly in the Spurs community. Lots of love pouring in for him, certainly, during this show. We've got the wonderful Sean Butler back on Last Word on Spurs. Spurs Talk Show. We're missing those daily walks. We know they're coming back soon, Sean. We cannot wait. I've got to say, mate, for rightly or wrong reasons, you're looking at absolutely amazing shape. I'm not sure it was enforced on you, but you're looking absolutely amazing, man. I've got to tell you that.
Yeah, Stress Fit. It's a new. I'm going to write a book about how to lose like 2 stone in 30 days. It's to basically get hacked and let your whole life fall apart. And the stress and the lack of sleep, you'll look good or better, but you might lose everything else. But Stress Fit's coming soon to a bookstore near you.
We are sending you all our love, mate. We are sending you all our love, that is for sure, mate. And we're hoping you be back on your feet very, very soon. Mitch, I want to turn the attention over to you. In terms of pressure, I think it's fair to say one player that, again, rightly or wrongly, your thoughts on it, this is what modern day football is now. When you've spent 65 million on a club record signing and they haven't delivered after 2-3 games, naturally that pressure will build and build and build. So how important was it, Mitch, for you that Dominic Solanke found the back of the net against Brentford in what we know is going to be a very, very busy period to come for him and for Spurs in general?
Yeah, massively important. Of course, you know that strikers will rely a lot on confidence in front of goal. It's a huge part of how they play. If a striker is not feeling confident and they're not backing themselves to be able to score when they get the opportunities, then it inevitably affects them. It affects the form of the team as well. So for Dom to obviously get off the mark against Brentford, I think was the perfect sort of I guess return. He was thrown back in after injury in the North London derby, which was always going to be a tough one. So for him to be back fully fit and to get a classic sort of poacher's goal, I think he's going to score a lot of goals like that for Tottenham this season. So that's really, really positive. And inevitably, when you slap a 65 million price tag on anyone, the expectations are going to be high very quickly. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's a lot of money to pay for a striker. And there's a lot of pressure on Solanke. He is, I guess, finally who we're expecting to replace Harry Kane in that central striker role after Richarlison not really doing the job for us. So he's got the weight of the world on him. I know it's very, very difficult to live up to Harry, and not many, or if any, strikers in the world can do that. But I've been really, really impressed with not just his efforts in front of goal and his goal on Saturday, but his general play as well. His pressing, for me, again on Saturday, was arguably more impressive than the goal that he scored, because he puts in a hell of a shift. And I haven't had a chance to research and look it up yet, but I want to have a look at how many presses in the final third he made, because I think he led the league in that for Bournemouth last season. Across all players in the Premier League, he had the most presses in the final third, and Ange loves that. We know that, and it was very noticeable for me in that game against Brentford. So that's also a massive positive. I think his hold-up play probably still needs a little bit of work. I think there's a few loose touches in there, but the fact that he is coming to drop deep sometimes and get on the ball, again, all the signs are positive, and he looks like he's bedding in with the team really well. I'm hoping that he forms a really good relationship with the likes of Sonny, with the likes of James Maddison, Kulusevski, because they are 3 players off the bat right there that can pick him out and provide him with the quality that he needs. And we haven't necessarily seen that as much as we would have liked so far this season, but I think we did see it against Brentford. So overall for me, positive. The expectations are there. I think for him, the target will be 10, 15 goals at least for Tottenham this season. So, as you've mentioned already, there are plenty of games for him to be able to do that. Whether he'll start on Thursday against Qarabag, I'm not entirely sure, just in terms of rotation and with how many games are coming up. And, there's all of that. But I personally would start him, because I think this early in the season, the more goals he can grab early on, the better for him, the better for his confidence, and it just eases that pressure even more, and he can just sort of get into the flow of things. So I'm really happy with him, and I enjoy watching him play, which is the main thing as well.
Yeah, man. Look, I think we all were so pleased to actually see a goal scorer out there for Spurs. It's been so long since we've had a centre forward, and for those that did obviously miss Ange Postecoglou's pre-match presser, we know Richarlison is quite away from featuring again for Spurs, and told the pre-match presser, for those that had missed that, to not bother asking him about Richarlison, he will update them when there's news, which in itself doesn't sound the most positive aspect of it. It feels that means he's quite way off. But then again, with Spurs and their medical team, they want to keep their cards fairly close to their chest. Simon, if I can ask you about Dominic Solanke, because there was some kind of social media narrative that Solanke was almost, it felt, the cheap option to Ivan Toney this summer. And that's a player that no Premier League club or European club ended up making a move for, which doesn't really make sense when you consider that eventually Brentford sold him to the Saudi Pro League side Al Ali for 40 million. Do you think Dominic Solanke can fill those big boots that have been left by Harry Kane? I'm not saying he can eclipse Harry Kane. I'm not saying he's the same player as Harry Kane, but can he simply be the goal scorer that we've needed since Harry Kane's departure? Can he fill the void of goals for Tottenham?
Definitely. I mean, to me, he's the perfect Ange striker. I think Ange is honest and genuine when he says that that's the guy he wanted all summer. I think, part of the things that I really like with Solanke is his work rate, the amount of running he did in that game. And we have to remember, he didn't have a preseason. So he's really, and he had an injury. So he's really early into this this season. And the levels of fitness you need to play in an Ange team as a forward is really high. His hold-up play, I think, is more than enough for what we need. It's the link-up play. You see the way we play against low blocks, and you want someone to be able to both, link up in between the lines, but also kind of drop deep and help us progress the ball, or even open up and take your defender with you. His game, his aerial game is fantastic, and he seems humble and really likable. So, to me, we'll never be able to replace Kane with another striker without paying hundreds of millions of pounds, but we can replace what Kane would have given us in this system. So yeah, I'm super excited. I'm really happy he scored. I think, as Mitch said, when you have that price tag, it's more about the narratives that follow you around, because he seems confident and happy with his own play, but you don't want it to become this thing. And I'd also play him every opportunity I can, I could, without risking his health. He didn't have a preseason. The players mentioned Maddison, Kulusevski, Son, Johnson are all new to him. He hasn't played with them. That chemistry needs to build. And I think some of the issues we've seen in the final third comes from that lack of chemistry. And you just want him to get up to that fitness that we need for him to be able to play the full 90.
Yeah. What I would say on that point there, someone brings in the fact, Sean, that it does feel like there's going to be a little bit of pressure in terms of the amount of games he's now going to have to play Solanke. Of course, with Richarlison, that looks to be out for what you got to say at the moment feels like the immediate future. Is that a good or a bad thing, Sean? The fact there's going to be so many games to come. He's got European games to come, arguably as well, domestic cup as well, with Spurs progressing in the Carabao Cup. Is that what he needs? I mean, because again, look, I don't want to age you as well. I'm sure, like me, you see many players come at Spurs in terms of strikers and not find rhythm and foul very quickly. But I think the good thing is, because there's so many games coming thick and fast with Europa as well, we saw Kane really make his name in the Europa League. Is this a real genuine opportunity now to start racking up goals to come for Spurs?
Well, yeah, 100% it is. I think you do have to be delicate with him, because the consequences of losing him would be drastic, not just in terms of he is our number one, highest record transfer, the importance of replacing someone like Harry Kane for all the reasons that Simon and Mitch have just sort of rationaled for you, which I agree with, by the way. I think that you do have to be a little bit careful not having Richarlison. Now, I'm not someone who's a massive fan of Richarlison, the player. Generally, I wasn't on board with him signing for Tottenham when he did, and I haven't really seen any reason to kind of change that mind over the last, whatever it is, 2 seasons. I think that I'm obviously sorry that he's gone through some tough times in his life, and I think he deals with his dealings with confidence are reflected on the pitch. With regards what to do with Solanke, I think that you do have in a squad now a team that has versatility at its core, and I think that is something that Ange has been very vocal about. And I think that the versatility aspect offers us something here that is going to be something we're going to have to take advantage of over these coming weeks. I don't think it's the right idea to expect Dominic Solanke to necessarily play 90 minutes every week or twice a week all the way through. I think that we do have options with Kulusevski, can play that false 9. Sonny, if absolutely necessary, can move in. I think that we do have a range of midfield or attacking players that can offer us something different in a world where it's asking too much of a guy who's just recovering from his own injury and Solanke to play every 90 minutes. What I would say about that versatility thing, though, I think that the word in and of itself is driven around by this concept of a physical demonstration of a player who's willing to play or capable of playing in 2 or more positions. But I think actually what it comes down to really is more of a physical demonstration, of like a tangible demonstration of a mindset, like a more of an intangible thing that Ange is looking for in his players, in his squad, which is adaptability and a resilience to be able to take on the responsibilities of this philosophy that he abides by, which does ask people to do things that are a little bit unorthodox and a little bit less common than you would see in other managers. And I think that especially with the club going after an 18 to 21-year-old kind of policy with most of our talent ID at the moment, it's even more harder to find players that he can feel are going to be able to do that, take on that extra workload. And because there's just not a sample size of their actual, of their behavior to be able to see that for themselves. So he's looking for things in their physical play that could demonstrate the willingness to be adaptable. And I think that versatility is one of those metrics. And I think that is why we'll be okay through this period, even if Richarlison's out, because even if we don't have necessarily a second choice striker that's ready and available, I think we have players that will be able to fill in and sort of make it work. As long as we can take and convert as much of a higher percentage of the opportunities that we present ourselves with, then we'll be fine. And until now, like I say, I haven't been paying too much attention this season, unfortunately. But from what I've gathered, it's much the same until yesterday with players like Brennan Johnson and players like the forward line, generally speaking, that they have been lots of creativity, but not a hell of a lot of conversion, and that has to change, for this system to work.
Perfect segue, actually, Sean, into what you just put up there about Brennan Johnson. That's where I was going to go to actually next. So I'm going to come over to you. In regards to Brennan Johnson, I think that felt, again, like another big goal from him. The start of what was, let's be honest about it, it was a horrendous week with, again, which we can't condone at all, the abuse that the guy got online, which I said it's on the previous shows. I just can't understand anybody that would feel the need or would want to go and do that. I don't class that as a fan. I don't class that as a football fan. I'm not sure what I class that as, to be honest with you. And I'm sure for those that saw the end of the Coventry game, I just felt uncomfortable watching the way in which he obviously felt really uncomfortable approaching supporters with a gentle clap from obviously his match-winning goal. And then even you saw yesterday, to be fair, the element of the way he celebrated with that shushing celebration, almost trying to silence the doubters. I know the doubters will say, look, he's got to do it in the big games, which again, look, if you're talking from a footballing perspective alone, is fair. What I can't understand is why you just go on social media to abuse someone and make someone, again, of his age 23 or any age really, have to close their social world because of abuse. I just don't understand it. But in terms of what you've seen from him last season, Simon, this is a guy that produced, 15 GAs. And, again, he's had a fairly decent start this season as well. How confident are you that we're going to see the best of Brennan Johnson this season? Or again, do we need to take into account it's a young player? There are going to be inconsistencies, and therefore that does mean we're going to have bad days of Brennan Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, I think we will keep at times struggling in the final third. I think that's part of our challenge this season. But do I think Johnson can have a great season? Absolutely. Do I think he's a good quality player? Yes, I do. Do I think he has stuff that he needs to work on? And do I think that there's parts of certain types of games that doesn't really fit him or play to his strengths? Absolutely. That's why you have a squad, and he will have a good season in terms of the final third. If we have a good season in terms of final third, I mean, we have to present him with the right types of challenges in what types of areas. Mitch talked about this. Where do you want him? You want him. If you look at the 2 goals he scored in these 2 games, it's from us pressing, winning the ball back, and him scoring with space in front of him in transition. And we can produce those type of situations over and over again. So it's about how we play. We have to play with force. We have to play with speed. We have to have movement around him and other players in the forward line. So I think this notion that players can't be out of form, or that it immediately means that they're not good enough. We've seen it with Kulusevski. We've seen it with Son. We've seen it with basically every player in this squad have had times where they get abused, or we count them out for one reason or another. Maddison is a great example of someone we've seen recently, having people doubting his ability for us long term. I just think Johnson, especially being as young as he is, just needs support, and he needs to, but both from the coaching staff, but also from fans. He needs to feel like he has a place in this team. And I get really depressed when I see a young person coming to this new exciting opportunity in this big club, and really quickly being told that he doesn't have a place here, because, I mean, that's just awful. He does have a place here.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to echo the words, Simon. I really, really do. Lovely words there, I have to say. And look, Mitch, again, I'm one of those fans that does get frustrated with certain players where there's a tendency to have an inconsistency to their game. But again, I'll re-emphasize the point. For as much as I feel frustrated, I'll never understand how someone can actually go onto someone else's social media and then they want to abuse someone for that. I just doesn't enter my head or my mind. I just don't seem to understand it. But I want to ask you, Mitch, about the player, because again, it feels like a really important week for him in the Spurs shirt. He's delivered. He's scored a couple of goals. The argument will now be, okay, great to see you do it against Coventry. Great to see you against doing it at Brentford. Can you go and do it now against a Man United, a Liverpool, a Chelsea, an Arsenal? And I mean, maybe that is where that next kind of, no disrespect, target is. Can he now go and do it at the big clubs? Because again, with no disrespect, Man United we've got on the horizon next week. Man United is not the same Man United we just said this off air 10 years ago. So is this a game, Mitch, where you want to see a player like that produce a performance to ram it down the haters' throats, that he can do it against the bigger clubs?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I want to echo what everybody else has said. It's just, if you think it's okay to go on a player's social media or anyone's social media and abuse them, or just abuse anybody online at all, then you need some help, because it's just unacceptable. Just because somebody's got a different opinion to you. I have absolutely no problem with people criticizing players for their performances if they're not good enough. I do it. I've been very critical of some of Brennan Johnson's performances this season, but it wouldn't even cross my mind to go onto his personal Instagram page and leave comments there, saying some of the stuff is just horrible. And if I was a professional player, if I was in his position, I wouldn't have social media, or all my pages would be on private, because I just don't think it's worth it. But, I felt really, really bad for him at the end of the Coventry game, where, we all saw that clip where he was sort of tentatively wandering over to the Spurs fans, gave them a clap for about a second and then walked off. And to be honest, his celebration wasn't really too long in the Brentford game on Saturday. And that is because he probably feels like he does not have a connection with the fans of this club at the moment. And I don't blame him. He will be aware, as everybody else is, that he probably hasn't been good enough in the final third with some of his deliveries, some of his shots and chance creations. He will be completely aware of that. The difference is he will go away, and every day at training, he will work on that to try and get better, to try and improve. Whereas everybody else, they just get so annoyed at it and they let it get to their head so much that, they'll sit on their phone, or they'll sit in front of their laptop or computer and just write absolute horror comments on his pages. So, for me in that sense, it's just utterly ridiculous. Coming on to the player, and I want to talk about the player, because I think although there were probably a few chances that he maybe could have put away in the Brentford game, it was positive. I think the overall performance was positive, and it was really, really good to see him lead on from the Coventry performance. He obviously had to come off the bench in that game and saved our bacon with that goal. And I said in my reaction over on my channel after that, I said, I really, really hope he can use that to get a bit of confidence, get a bit of momentum in his game. And the perfect thing for him would be to score against Brentford. 2 goals in 2 games. All of a sudden, it's very difficult to criticise him when he's scoring goals, even if he is missing 3 or 4 chances a game. If he's still scored in that game, it makes it much more difficult to criticise him. So it's really, really nice to see him turning around. I'm so delighted for him over the last week or so after what he's been through. And ultimately, with the Odegaard injury now, he is going to be starting every Premier League game over on that right hand side, because I don't think Werner is anywhere near the level needed to be able to do anything significant for us this season. So Brennan Johnson is going to be that starter. I think the big debate was Odegaard should perhaps be starting ahead of him. Brennan Johnson's much better as a substitute, as an impact sub off the bench. But as a couple of people are pointing out in the comments, he had the numbers to back it up last season. 15 goals and assists or whatever it was, and he's already off the mark with a few this season. So if he's putting up the numbers, at the end of the day, I know a lot of people will sit there and say, I like to judge players on the eye tests, but you do also have to consider the statistics sometimes. And for 23 years old, a lot of faith has been put in him by Ange Postecoglou, who we saw the reports over the summer that Ange was always planning on using him as a starter this season, that he's a big fan of Brennan Johnson. For me, it comes back round to the point of backing the manager. If you want to back the manager and the project that he's building, and he's such a massive fan of Brennan Johnson, if that's who he wants to play and that's who he is going to be starting, then fine, let's get on board. Obviously, come back to me in a month's time or so if he's dropped like 8 consecutive disaster classes on the pitch without a goal or assist in that time, and we'll have a conversation again. But at the moment, it looks like he's starting to turn things around, and I hope he can continue on that upwards trajectory.
Yeah, listen, I think some lovely words there, Mitch, that's for certain. And again, I think many would echo the point that, look, whilst there's the eye test, stats alone do tell you that player did produce for Spurs last season, and you think in the second season, it was only going to get better. So listen, we'll see on that point. Sean, I want to ask you about James Maddison. Again, it's very, very similar in terms of players that we're all expecting and we're all kind of waiting for delivery when it comes to essentially the point of where we're hoping for a player to, again, in that second season, really come alive. I think it's fair to say that Maddison, in the 10 games of last season to begin with, was absolutely flying. He was absolutely superb. And I think we noticed respect to James Maddison, he didn't really set the heights after that first 10 games where he showed us what he could be and what he can be. And I felt, going back to that Brentford game for me, I think we saw the Maddison that we saw of the first 10 games of last season. We have to hope, of course, that's a consistency that he's going to find in his game and it's not a one-off. Because I think it's fair to say, Sean, on his day, James Maddison, when he's in that form for Tottenham, he really makes the team tick. We look electric. He looks electric. And he actually brings another dimension to Spurs. Would you agree on that point for you, Sean? We're going to try and unmute Sean. Bear me a second.
Sorry, guys.
We can't say nice things about James Maddison on here, Sean. They're refusing to let us.
No, listen, I think James Maddison's he started, again, the small sample size that I have to work off, and I apologise for them not being more sort of well-rounded with my recency bias. But I think that this time last year we were talking about whether it's Madders or the fella who won't be named over at Arsenal, who would get into the combined 11 of the two teams. And I think that Tottenham fans had made a very strong argument for James Maddison. At the time, it made sense. Obviously, the rest of the season, it all kind of fell apart after, I think it was the Chelsea game. And yesterday was the best performance, I think, that we've seen from him, including those first 10 games. I don't think there has been a better performance from him, in my memory, since maybe one of the sort of second or third games of last season. And that is a really good sign, because if Tottenham are going to be able to go deep in the cups, deep into Europe, and deep into hopefully a top 4 challenge this year, to do all of them, I think is a stretch. But if it is possible, if it's plausible, then it's going to require the people on the pitch that have the most experience amongst a very youthful entity. Generally, it's going to require them to step up, stand up, and deliver. Not when not when it's suitable, but regardless of the circumstances. And I think with Maddison, it took a little bit too long to recover from his injury. I think he came out of the blocks flying. The injury obviously disrupted us and him. and it took a long time. Same with Bentancur, not to get off the topic, but I think his performance yesterday was fantastic as well. In that midfield, asking to play a little bit deeper, do something we haven't really sort of utilized with Kulusevski in there as well. I thought Bentancur, do I think he's the ultimate 6 for what we need? No, I think we need a monster 6 that is very specific in the role and the requirements. But I think him being able to drop deeper, and when he did, we kind of the whole squad sort of fell back a little bit, which I think gave us more room. It gave Maddison more room to maneuver. I think that he is a victim of the system as much as he is a struggle to recover from his injuries. I think that the system compresses everybody a little bit too much and doesn't give him enough room. Therefore, he comes deeper to get the ball. And then when he has been deep, he's not used to being that deep on a football pitch. That's never where he has played at Coventry or Leicester before Tottenham. So you're asking one of your best, most creative players to come deep to find the ball. The system kind of was obviously confusing for him. And like I said yesterday, seeing a different version of the system that was clearly by design allowed him to maintain that liberal kind of free creative role, but at the same time also get back on the ball with a little bit more, an extra yard for him to work in. And you saw a version of him that was very familiar and very, very satisfying on the eye. So for me, I hope that Ange notices the difference in what is possible. And people are going to say, well, it's just Brentford at home, right? You expected to beat Brentford at home and cruise past them. I would argue that Brentford are a very, very difficult team to beat. Tactically, very, very solid under Thomas Frank. And they're never an easy 3 points. Now, Tottenham have a decent record against them, but it's not like a walk in the park. So, again, James Maddison, for me, the man of the match yesterday, and very, very important performance from him, a needed, necessary performance, alongside a goal from Solanke. I echo what the guy said again about Brennan Johnson. Don't agree with the way he's treated. Do I think he has hit the ground running necessarily to the value that we paid? No, but that's not his fault. Do you need to give someone patience? Yes. If he could he's always in the right place. He just doesn't necessarily always get, his conversion metrics. But I think if he can find his confidence that would start with people getting off his back, then he'll be a 12, 13 goal a season guy. And like I say, James Maddison is key and crucial to all of our hopes this year. So sorry, Ricky, it's a bit of a long-winded answer, but
I'm so glad when you brought up Rodrigo Bentancur, because I think there is maybe concern about what comes to Bentancur in the near future. That was his third game in 6 days, having played 95 minutes or so at Coventry in the week. And, you would have said, he had every right to look fatigued in that game, but if anything, dominated the midfield, coming for his teammates. He was racing back. On the day, he made 3 interceptions, 2 tackles as well. And like Maddison, I think really excelled in the middle of the park and gave Spurs a real driving force to them. We're currently in a situation here, Simon, coming over to you, where we're waiting to hear from the FA and what happens next for him. He's got a potential 6 to 12 game ban around the corner. Not what we want at this time. But again, given the nature of what happened in the incident with Sonny, many would say, look, he's going to take the crime that comes with the nature of what happened. Is that a real shame? Because we're just seeing, I think, the re-emergence of Bentancur. Probably, I would say that performance was his best since the ACL injury. Does that make it even more of a shame that this ban is around the corner? And again, it will be a case Spurs will be able to use him freely when it comes to European competition, Simon.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a shame. I don't know. We haven't heard anything about what kind of, I think it's 6 games, could be
6
less.
to 12. Yeah, between 6 to 12, we understand, will be the
6
metric.
games is a lot. So, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm worried about it, because, as you say, we have European play, we have the cups. I mean, if we get banned in other competitions, then I think we're in trouble. But it is limiting, because what I like, and I feel like you can't talk about Maddison or Bentancur without talking about them all. And that's why I sympathize with Sean going around, because they all come together. And we talk about the versatility of players, and we talk about us making changes. I think we've seen us go more from a 4-2-1-3-1 setup to a more 4-3-3 now, with one player sitting behind. And what I really like with Bentancur's performance against Brentford is that he's really good at sensing danger. He's really good at snuffing stuff out, and he's much more alert in some ways than Bissouma. Bissouma has other strengths. So in games where we really pressed, Bissouma has that ability to be press resistant and to progress the ball up. But I really like the way Bentancur snuffed out danger in so many places, in so many ways. So not having that ability to kind of match the player to the game, that will be a shame for both the team, and it's obviously a shame for him. I don't dispute the punishment. I think him being punished is the right thing to do, but it is limiting, and it is a shame for him. But in another sense, he will get games, which is good. Yeah,
I do agree. Mitch, I need to ask you about one of the most uncomfortable moments of that game, unfortunately, and that's from Guglielmo Vicario. Interestingly, Ali Gold, friend of the show, confirmed on Sunday that he was officially added to the leadership group at Tottenham. He becomes the 4th member, along with Son, Maddison, and Romero. Look, despite a couple of, I've got to say, absolutely incredible saves that he pulled off in that game against Brentford. I mean, this one here for our watching audience, just, I'm not sure how he kept the ball out. It was an absolutely remarkable save. And look, despite, like I say, a couple of worldies, I think the overshadowing moment for those that are watching this show will note this moment that has caused a lot of controversy, I think it's fair to say, online and during the game, in which, for those that missed this, and I mean, again, listen, you might have been under a rock if you had missed this moment, because social media was going absolutely crazy. Around the wobble of, I mean, dealing with kind of issues in his penalty box, he came and flapped a moment for a cross when he clearly handled the ball outside of his box. Now, the officials missed it, and the suggestion is that VAR did not intervene, as it was not a red card moment or preventing a goal scoring opportunity with multiple Spurs players behind him. And at worst, Vicario would have been booked and a free kick would have been given. Now, both Frank and Ange both played down it as a talking point, only stating that only a free kick would have come across it. But, you know, I've got to be honest, I know many fans are maybe concerned at the moment by the nature of Vicario in terms of the dominance in the 6-yard box. I mean, where are you on him for you, Mitch? Because there's no doubt about it. Look, he's a formidable, in my opinion, shot stopper. I think there's no question about the guy's shot stopping ability. But I think for me, one of the things I look for as a goalkeeper is dominating the 6-yard box, coming for crosses, and as a fan feeling, okay, my keeper's got it. I'm going to be with you, Mitch. I do not feel like that at the moment. Do you?
Yeah, I mean, that's a crazy Photoshop you pulled up a minute ago with him handling the ball outside the box like that. It's crazy.
I wish it was a Photoshop. I wish it was. It looks like it should. It looks like it would have been Photoshopped.
It really does. Honestly, the ref is. I don't know how the refs missed it, honestly, but look, Vicario is a really, really strange one because I really like him as a bloke and a personality, and I wasn't surprised to hear the news he's been added to the leadership group after, only being at the club for a season, because he's very clearly a leader within that squad. We see it on the pitch during the games, how vocal he is, how animated he is, and I think we need a little bit of that. Whereas maybe the likes of Sonny, maybe the likes of Maddison, Romero are a bit more. I don't know. I'm cautious of putting the word calm and collected in the same bracket as Romero sometimes, but they're perhaps a little bit more subtle with how they perhaps earn the respect of their teammates and how they engage with them. But with Vicario, it's something a little bit different, and I think you need that within the leadership group to have that balance. You want to have that balance to be able to reach every area of the squad, and I think Vic probably resonates with quite a lot of the younger squads and squad members. And for me, everything that he did wrong in that Brentford game and the moments where we had our sort of hearts in our mouths, he made up for with those, and particularly that one brilliant save that he made, 2-1 up. So for me, it's... Do you know what? I've seen a lot of people saying we've got like a Lloris 2.0 on our hands, who's a really, really good shot stopper, but not really great with his feet. But I actually think Vicario is quite good with his feet. I think he just is a little bit slow to play the ball that he needs to play, and he perhaps sometimes thinks he's got a little bit more time than he has. I think his actual ball playing abilities and his ability to play those passes out from the back are fine. He's probably been instructed to take a little bit more time to make sure he finds that right pass. And it's difficult, isn't it? You know, you see it when you're getting pressed high by a team. It's difficult to make that right pass, because the last thing you want to do is make the wrong pass in that area because you're getting closed down and you concede a goal from it. But then on the flip side of it, if you take too long, you get dispossessed. And obviously we nearly saw that at the weekend as well. So I'm not saying there's not lots to improve on for Vicario, because there is. I really don't want to go too much into the set piece stuff, because it could be an entire show on its own, Ricky, honestly, with that.
I didn't want to go that way, but yeah, I know. It could certainly go that way, but certainly.
He's a good shot stopper. He's a good leader. What I really like about Vicario is his ability to get us going really quickly. You know, when he does come out and claim the ball and pluck it out of the air, he sends the boys straight away if it's on. And I really like that, especially when we're playing against a low block and there's not necessarily always that space in behind. So I like the way he reads the game, but there is still stuff to work on. And I'm not going to sit here and be bitter about it, but, you know, obviously we know how close we were to perhaps signing David Raya, and we've seen some of the performances he's been putting in across the road over the last couple of weeks. But, you know, Vicario's got a lot of work, I think, to do to reach that level still, but I'm not saying that he can't reach that level.
Okay. Shawnee, not to age you too much, mate, in terms of goalkeepers that you've seen in your time at Spurs. Like me, I'm sure you remember the days of I said Carl Walker. It wasn't Carl Walker back then, even though he definitely was a goalkeeper brother. Ian Walker, Espen Bartson.
Espen Bartson, the best shot stopper Tottenham have ever had. He was absolutely phenomenal. Couldn't do anything else, but he was sensational as a shot stopper.
I'm going to put for one thing, I'm not putting Vicario in that bracket in terms of the categories there, but I mean, again, you've been lucky, Sean. You've not had to worry about it too much this season in terms of watching him. I mean, but from that Goodison Park or Everton game last season away, obviously it's become a real focus for opposition teams that clearly, from a corner or from any kind of set piece, if you do get in front of him, he's very easily, it seems, to use that word now, modern kids use the word rattled. He doesn't feel comfortable. I mean, is that a worry, Sean, where one of the most, I think, important things as a goalkeeper is that you control and dominate that 6-yard box? That is your area. That is your territory. And if you are not dominating that, for me as a goalkeeper, that is a big fundamental wrong. And I hope, like I say, we can work on that. We can adjust that. And he's going to have that protection as well. But I'm hoping that I really want to see him come into his own now in these next few weeks and months where that is not becoming a reoccurring issue. Because if I was a goalkeeper, if you can't do that, that's for me the bread and butter. Is that fair, Sean? Would you suggest that?
It's definitely a deal breaker for me if you can't. 100%. I love the guy. I echo once again. It's difficult to disagree with the boys tonight. I agree with the general sentiment that he's a likable guy, demonstrates leadership, not afraid to handle situations on the pitch or off it. I'm guessing, but definitely on the pitch where I've seen it, where he wants to kind of chastise a player for making a mistake. He's very happy to do it publicly. And all of those things demonstrate, okay, you've got a certain type of personality in the dressing room that should be utilized in a way that's going to benefit the team. And Ange is someone that, like I said, I've said it twice already tonight. I do think he abdicates a little bit of responsibility, a little bit too much for me in terms of how much is handed over to other people to figure out. But he's got the leadership group and he's given a spot to Vicario. It makes sense because if you're going to be that sort of character naturally, then you probably need to have some sort of recognized authority within the dressing room for it to carry some weight. And if you don't, then maybe it might go down the wrong way at times. However, with that, if you're going to live by the sword, you have to die by the sword. And there's a couple of bits that I think worry me a little bit. Obviously, yes, he doesn't dominate his 6-yard box. We know that, and that is a problem that needs to be resolved. I would also say he's very quick to put his hand up and almost apologize to the fans when there's a bit of a mistake that happens. Or I'm not sure who he's apologizing to, but it's like a recognition of it. Yeah. I think it happened twice yesterday. And I would rather he not be distracted by worrying about the kind of what's going on. And if he's, if it's entering his mind that he's made a mistake and the fans are on his back about it. Again, going back to the same thing with Brennan Johnson, right? These people are human beings and you should treat them as such. Keep that in your mind, because if you want Tottenham to win, then you want these players to be as confident in doing their jobs as they can be. But with Vicario specifically, I do think he's a little bit Jekyll and Hyde in that regard, that he's happy to dish it out to his teammates on the pitch, but I think that you need to worry less about that kind of persona as a person and worry more about figuring out your job. And he hasn't figured out that glaringly obvious hole in his game, which is dominating or being dominated very easily by every team. And this game, the difference between winning and losing and 3 points or not is so small in the Premier League that every little advantage is seized upon by every team apart from us. And going back to Ange's his strategies around adaptation, it's nice to see, like I said already, what happened yesterday was something different. I would like to see more of that with regards dealing with things tactically, like if Vicario can't figure it out for himself because he's not brave enough to push people or he's too concerned by it, someone else in the team needs to step in, or the coach needs to dedicate some sort of tactic to overcome it, because that will be the difference between finishing 4th and 6th at the end of the season. The points that you lose from unnecessary set piece goals conceded will be the difference between Champions League or otherwise, or European football or otherwise, or a cup lifted or not. And it's something that's very easy to you haven't got to dedicate a change in philosophy, a change in football philosophy to figure out a set piece situation. But we haven't done it. He hasn't done it as a player. The squad haven't done it, and and that to me is like everyone else said, it's an ongoing concern that shouldn't be a part of our conversation at this stage. It's been going on for 6 months now, and it hasn't been fixed.
I mean, I don't want to make the show a downer, because I think it's been fairly positive for those who have been tuned into Last Word on Spurs over the last few weeks. And you are a positive guy, right? We love you for being positive.
Yeah, I'm here with the confidence.
Come on, bring us the confidence, Simon. Is this an area that's going to improve?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know what. So much interesting stuff here I want to address. So on Vicario, I think one contextual thing we need to remember is that we ask him to do a lot. We ask him to be a great shot stopper. We're asking him to be basically our last defender when we are way up on the other side of the half. We want him to come out and stop things. We want him to be present in the box. We want him to be brilliant with his feet, both short distances and finding long distances with range. And we put him in a lot of situations where he's under pressure, the way we play. So he's going to find himself in a lot of different types of situations that he has to master. And I think it's pretty understandable that he will make mistakes. That risk we play with comes with mistakes, playing out from the back or defending so high up. So that's part of it. And when it comes to the set pieces stuff, I think we have improved. I think this has become a little bit of a narrative that a lot of pundits and media have talked a lot about, and so we become really self-conscious about it, and we become really focused on it. I don't know if anyone saw the Arsenal game, but Arsenal just scored a goal exactly the way they scored on us, pinning Edison down, basically standing in front of him falling down, and then score, and Gabriel heading it in. So I think it's also kind of this rule thing that they made some rule changes for this season where you can't run into the goalkeeper, which we saw a lot of teams do last season. But just standing in front of the goalkeeper, basically stopping him being able to come up and playing the corners and dead balls, claiming the ball in dead ball situations, is something that seems to be like this gray area where teams have figured out that they can kind of exploit the opposition team. I do feel like I can't really address the part of him being apologizing to the fans, but he is Italian. He's very expressive. He goes, and he goes, sorry, and he's really big, which is great for memes, but I do understand that it does give him the perception from, especially Gary Neville, it seems to have drilled down on him being too fidgety or looking nervous.
I think the term he used was ants in his pants. I think he said last week.
Ants in his pants, exactly. And I think that's basically part of his personality. So we might have to live with that. And obviously, he has things he needs to improve on. But I do feel like looking at all the boxes he has to check, he checks a lot of boxes. And the stuff that he has to improve on, I think it's a little bit early to kind of say that he won't be able to improve on those things. And just like we talked a little bit about Ange, and I think Sean, I'd love to debate with Sean or talk with Sean about how he views Ange's coaching style. Because from my point of view, I feel like he's trying to keep it simple, teaching the fundamentals, and then letting the team struggle through the issues. And that's why he talks about responsibility. He needs a certain type of personality that can, young or older, that can kind of do something and then figure it out by themselves. And then I think the next step is what we're starting to see now, which is him making adjustments, giving them help, giving them instructions. But I also think that he probably couldn't do that earlier. Like there's some parts that we had to work on before he could load them up with new information and
I agree.
So sometimes I see the same things, but I don't go at them as much because I kind of feel like, oh, we'll come to that period where it's starting to be more where we have to criticize him about details, about adjustments, about, adding stuff on the basics that we seem to starting to be better at being consistent with. Like now we're really consistent with playing out from the back. We're really consistent in possession. We're really consistent with the press. But now we have different things that come with that, with the adjustments other teams do, with, finding that next level, which is exactly pointed out by Sean when he talks about that's the difference between 6th and 4th, between the trophy or not.
Just quickly, Simon, on that point, mate. So I agree with everything you just said, by the way. Like I 100% acknowledge that Ange had to do. You can't run before you walk. You have to get the system into the minds. I'm on board it, and I'm hoping that yesterday was the first of many to come demonstrations of a little bit more complexity to the ideology. Well, and just the last thing I would say is with regards to Vicario, I'm a fan of him. I'm happy that he's in the squad. I didn't really, when he came into the squad, didn't know too much about him. I wasn't perturbed by the idea that we missed out on Raya. It is what it is. Maybe we had a plan B the whole time, and who knows. But one thing I would say in his defense is if any position is offered a little bit more of a like a strangling effect over their abilities or their options under Ange Ball, it's the goalkeeper, right? He's not really allowed to, by the model, bang the ball long, which every other goalkeeper is afforded the opportunity to when they're under pressure. So when Tottenham fans get on his back for taking a little bit too long for trying to find the pass, it's because it's been drilled into him every time that you're not supposed to bang the ball long in this model. Whereas every other goalkeeper, when there's a bit of pressure, can just do that. And he doesn't want to because he's not supposed to. I think he has done a few times, which is actually quite brave of him to actually kind of take that on and go, you know what, in this moment, it's better just to smash it long anyway. I'm going to take it. And that's a demonstration of leadership, which is good to see. But generally speaking, he tries to stick to the plan, Batman, which ultimately means that the strikers of the other team that are going to press, they're going to know that. And therefore, there is going to be moments where he's going to be under pressure and make mistakes in that kind of vein outside of the set piece setup. So I think you have to, again, give him a little bit more as a fan. If you are someone who's on his back right now, you probably need to recognize the responsibilities of which he has to adhere to under this philosophy, which does have certain conditions that are more difficult for certain positions to adapt to.
And know that Ange is fine with that. He's fine with that risk because he thinks that 9 out of 10 times it helps us. But it might be one time where it hurts us. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, he's so exposed in those, in the way, exposed and limited, which comes with a difficulty. We have to remember, he comes from never playing this way. He's played in low table teams where he flanks it long and being a good shot stopper. So this bravery and these instructions are new to him. So hopefully he will be able to kind of develop and improve with the team. And if he doesn't, we'll find out.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing you say there, Simon. Definitely, we are going to find out. Like I say, we've got a huge host of games coming up, and it'll be interesting what Ange does do. Of course, Spurs are returning to Europe, which is where we're going to close this segment on. Because, I think many are excited about a potential European campaign. There was a lot of debate last season about whether Spurs were more suited to a Europa League campaign rather than a Champions League campaign. We've got Europa League campaign to look forward to, whether people like it or not. And that does start this upcoming week, where Spurs will play Qarabağ in their opening group stage fixture. Obviously, we know it's all changed with this new Europa League format, featuring 8 group stage games, all against different sides. A team, again, you'd have to be truly awful to avoid making it through to the knockout stage. And that gives Ange a bit more latitude to rotate his side and keep players fresh for the game against Manchester United. We know that because of previous misdemeanors, unfortunately, whether it's good or bad, Christian Romero will get an enforced rest and will be suspended for this upcoming game against Qarabağ on Thursday, thanks to that red card against AC Milan. Yes, I know many have tried to blank it from their memory. It was a long, long time ago, to be fair. But yes, Romero will not be available for the game against Qarabağ on Thursday. I mean, you might find there'll be a more youthful elements the way Spurs will line up. You'd imagine there will be minutes the likes of Mikey Moore, of course, Archie Gray, and of course Bergvall as well, Lucas Bergvall, in which you would like to think we'll see an element of both. Some experience in there, some, of course, youth. I mean, again, worth bearing in mind, as we know, that with the ban hanging over Rodrigo Bentancur's head, you'd imagine Rodrigo is going to feature very heavily in this European campaign. So we shall see with regards to what that's going to offer. And the likes of, again, Pat Matassar, you feel need vital minutes. I mean, again, I've got to be honest with you. I am stunned that Jed Spence was, again, not going to another conversation, was not picked for the squad. I understand there's been doubts over the likes of Whiteman and Austin long term. But I mean, when you look at, with no disrespect, the performance of Fraser Forster in the Carabao Cup, I mean, I don't mean to be rudely, how bad must Whiteman and Austin be? I mean, if we're now in a situation where Forster's got to play these games, it does worry me. It does worry me. And again, I think for Spence, when we saw that again performance in the week against Coventry, I would have loved to see him playing his competition, because I think Spence has got a big future at Spurs, and he's retained, I think, and regained a real feeling around the Spurs fan base. This guy can go on to be a real star in the making if given minutes, if given time. Let's start this one with Mitch. Mitch, European campaign upon us here for Tottenham. I think we all want to see Spurs take it seriously. Qarabağ at home to start. What do you want to see, Mitch, on this European campaign? I suppose the biggest question of all, can Spurs go all the way?
Well, the main thing, Rick, is I want to see us win it. that is the number one priority. Look, I want to find the balance. I want to find the balance between still dominating and winning these games, particularly in the early stages of the Europa League, but also being able to give minutes to those that we haven't seen as much as perhaps we might have wanted this season. So I'm talking about Archie Gray, I'm talking about Lucas Bergvall, I'm talking about Mikey Moore in particular. I want them to be able to get minutes on the pitch and showcase what they can do. I thought Archie Gray and Lucas Bergvall in particular were pretty decent, it's hard to describe anyone as pretty decent in that Coventry game, but maybe two of our brighter players out of the ones that were on the pitch.
Bergvall,
but
definitely, Mitch. For 70 minutes,
yeah,
Bergvall was superb.
Exactly. Yeah. So I want to see them get more minutes on the pitch, but I don't want us to, at the same time, I don't want us to underestimate the opposition. I don't want to go into Thursday's game thinking it's a formality, because, we've seen stranger things. We've seen worse defeats. We've been there before. So, Ange needs to find the right balance. He needs to find the right, time to bring these younger players in and choose the right fixtures for it, because we do have some tough trips and games in this early stage of the Europa League. And then once we get into the knockout stage, for me, no messing about there. I want us to win it. I want us to go Hail Mary for this competition. And that is where you need to be playing your strong team, even if it's not the Champions League, even if it's the Europa League. And I really hope that the players are buying into the idea of winning the Europa League this year. I know a lot of the players have come out over the summer and over the start of the season saying we really want to win something this year. You know, we really want to progress. This club's gone too long without silverware. We need to see everyone at the club back it up. And, you know, we should be able to get through the initial stage with rotation and with giving players a chance. And then once we get into February next year, when we get, well, I don't want to tempt fate, when we're hopefully in those knockout stages, you know, that's when you get really serious and that's where you go for it. That's what I want to see. And at the end of the day, Ricky, I want to be flying out to Bilbao at the end of the season. I want to, whether I've got a ticket or not, mate, I want to be flying out there for the final to watch it either in the stadium or watch it in a pub or just be in and amongst Spurs fans, hopefully in a European final. That is the aim, and I really, really hope we can do that this season.
Yeah. I mean, we want to take this bloody thing on tour. Can we take Last One on Spurs on tour? Can we take the Spurs talk show on tour? Can we take them to Bilbao? That'll be lovely, wouldn't it? Can we take them both on tour? We could do it overseas, couldn't we, Shawnee? I'm sure we could do it overseas. We make it work. Don't ask me how we do it. We'll find a way to make it work. We would, most certainly. I'm going to bring Simon in and go to Shawnee on that point. What do you reckon, Shawnee? Can we do it, though? Could we take them on tour if we get there? We get to Bilbao?
100%, mate. I actually did answer them, but I was on mute once again. I keep pressing the mute button to myself. I don't know why I'm doing it. I'm just out of I'm out of habit with the.
Shawnee, we're Spurs fans. We want to spend our life on mute at the moment. I don't blame you.
Listen, we're going to go to Bilbao. We're going to do a double up. We're going to be streaming all over the place. It's going to be absolutely sensational, and no one needs to know about any of that stuff because it won't be online. There'll be different things going on, but it's going to be. What it's going to require for us to get there is, as Mitch was saying, is the team to take it seriously. One thing that's in our favour this year, as opposed to previous, the last 2 or 3 years, is that there is a massive closing of the gap between our first 11 and the 15 or 16 players behind that. Before it was very much a decent first 11, and the drop off was very steep, very quick. This time around, I feel like, as you know, the boys have been saying, with Bergwijn, with Mikey Moore stepping up, with some of the youth players plus the players we've just brought in, all of them look like the leveling up, the closing of the gap is so quick and so steep. We still have a level jump to go to be able to compete with Arsenal and Manchester City, but in terms of for the Thursday night stuff, I think that, you know, I don't really mind how Ange approaches the Thursday night squad picking, because, you know, for the first time ever, I look at the bench week in, week out, and I think it's the best it's been for a long time, and it's exciting. And I'm really intrigued to see what Bergwijn's like. I'm really intrigued to see what the other 18, sort of 19-year-old kids are like. And I think that they're good enough, or at least they're supposed to be able to command the place. And for them, these Thursday nights are not if you think back to how it was with Conte and I think Nuno for a period, there was a distinct A team and a B team. The B team went to Europe for the Conference League. They were told in that regard that they are B team players. You're not really part of.
Ben Davies told us, Shawnee, as well. Ben Davies told us we feel like the B team.
Yeah, right. And I think that was a really bad message to send, that you're going because you're not playing on Sunday. There's someone else in your position who's ahead of you. I think this time around, Ange is going to be able to very clearly say tell and spread the message. No one's position is safe, because versatility is the kind of core key influencing message here, that any one of you can play in any number of positions, and therefore, consequently, you're not just looking over your shoulder at the guy who directly competes with you, but you're looking at any number of other players and thinking, I've got to play well if I am in the first team, and if I'm playing on Thursday nights, you also have to be thinking, I can put in a shift here and also put my sort of name in the hat for the weekend coming. And I think that is it's a brilliant thing. It's the best part of this kind of squad rotation that has happened in a long time. The gap is closed. The gap has closed. We're still, like I say, a level away from getting to the very best, but the squad is capable now to be able to mount a charge on multiple fronts, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, listen, on that point there, Sean, we'll come to Simon and we're going to close on one final question to everybody. Simon, how do you think Ange will, as Sean touches upon there, manage the Thursday to Sunday model? Because I think it's fair to say that, you know, some managers really struggled in their time at Spurs doing that. I mean, I think Maurizio probably was one of the better for doing that when you consider obviously what Maurizio did with Spurs in terms of getting them in a title race and keeping them there for a number of seasons. I think it's fair to say Conte was wishing us out of Europe before he actually got us in the Champions League. I mean, it was the most bizarre situation where I think he was on champion on disqualification from the Europa League Europa Conference League to even downgrade us further, because he seemed to say that he loved the training, obviously, to have them 5 days a week on the training ground, and then that was more beneficial for the Saturday-Sunday game. So how do you expect Ange to approach it? Do you foresee there being a number of changes? And I think quite obviously the question is, can it work, Simon? Can we be successful back in Europe? Where I know many Spurs fans that they love European journeys, they love European tours, they love European away days. Can we get to Bilbao, Simon? Can we make it happen?
I mean, to me, we're the obvious favorites, aren't we? I mean, like, I think
that's what's worrying.
betting, I think we're like third favorites, but to me, we're the obvious favorite. I think there's no question about it. I think Sean brings up something really important that I actually forgot about the A team and B team and that whole debacle. I actually think Ange made a mistake in the commentary game by making so many changes and almost making it like a B team coming up there. And I don't think we're quite there. I think we have a much better depth, but we still have core players. Like we have a foundation where there's a couple of players that will play a lot of games. I think players like Vicario, Romero, or Van der Ven. Porro is extremely important when it comes to the final third and creation. I think you have to have Kulusevski or Maddison in. I think you have to have one of our wingers in. I think there's like 5-6 players that you probably want to be in there. And then you have to be smarter with the rotation. And it's, to be fair to Ange, it's been hard because we haven't won games and we have been chasing games late, so hasn't been able to kind of rotate players off. So I think he really wanted to give players like Romero, Van der Ven, Son, Maddison rest for that coming to game. But you could immediately see that core foundation that we were working on pretty quickly disappeared and we looked shambles. So I think he has to be much smarter. And I'd rather see him start a bit stronger and then take players off. And I'd also like to, like if we're able to play well, I think from now until the international break, on the 12th of October, we have 4 games. It's 2 in Europe, 2 in the Premier League. So if we can be smart with managing players, taking them off, if we have a good game against Manchester United or Brighton, but also not being scared of playing some of those most important players in those games, making sure that we get a strong start instead of us chasing both games and chasing points in that European group. I think we'll be fine. And I think that's, you have to look at it that way. You have to take a couple of games together. You have, as I said, 4 games until the next break, and you make plans for all those games. Make the best of it.
Yep. Great points. I've got to say, Simon, absolutely great points. I mean, look, I know there's some maybe concern around the fact Ange doesn't have a great, strong European record. But look, again, you've got to be in Europe to obviously achieve a decent record in Europe. So look, we have to hope for him. A chance in Europa League, you maybe argue, is probably Spurs' level right now. I think we're all probably in agreement that's where we're at. I do want to ask the guys the kind of final question to you all. We're now, of course, 5 games into the season. We've seen us play in the Carabao Cup. We're obviously in Europe this coming week. Just really keen to know if expectations have changed or what our feelings are between now and the rest of the season. I mean, for better or for worse, guys, don't all smile when I say this. You're probably going to be on a lot throughout this season. Don't look so worried and scared by what is to come. But I mean, I'll just ask you, Simon, there, as a debutant coming into this one, obviously I've seen these 5 games. Are you more hopeful? Are you more cautious from the 5 games you've seen? What do you think the expectations are for the season based on what we've seen so far from Spurs under Ange?
I mean, I feel like I'm in the minority. I'm bullish. I mean,
we love that. We love that. We need that on our...
To me, this is always going to be a harder season than the first season almost, because we have more games. I think we go from 38 to 50 plus probably.
Yep, that's right.
And
yep.
Sure, we have better depth, but we have younger players. So to me, I'm going to judge this season not so much on where we end up in the table. It's obviously going to be part of it, but it's about, taking more points, conceding less, scoring more, being more consistent. If we can do that while playing more games, that's progress to me. Now, that's a very, very adult answer. But if we can be more consistent and improve our numbers, that will make me see that we made progress. on that, I'd love us to make a real run at one of the cups for Europe. And as I said, I'm bullish that we'll win at least one trophy this season.
Simon, that's why we love you online. You're keeping us all going, my friend. You don't know it, but you are keeping us all going. That's where a lot of those retweets and likes are coming from, my man. We love having you, like I say, on X. Someone's got to keep the Spurs community going on X. God, that's gone downhill. I've got to say, X in these last few years, I've got to say, you are the one trying to keep it. You're just propping it up, just on a stool there. Just keeping it going. Someone's got to do it. Someone's got to do the job. Someone's doing the job.
I saw a space there in the market, and I took it.
Well done.
Someone's got to do it. Someone's got to do the job. They have. Someone absolutely pleasure having you on Last Word on Spurs. Obviously, for those that want to find you, they can find you over at Simon Yemane. Simon, thank you so much, and we hope we'll get you back on at some point again very soon.
I loved it. This was such a, and I said, I mean, I just want to add, we look like a really cool rock band. Sean is obviously the singer, bassist, Ricky.
Mitch, about that.
You look like a drummer, and I'm the Hendrix of the.
Hey, I'll take it. I'll take that. I don't mind. Yeah, that sounds great.
If someone told me having 2 kids under 4, I'd be in a rock band, I wouldn't believe you. But listen, Simon, I'll take it all day long. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on. I know people have absolutely loved the positivity that I know some have been absolutely craving during this show and for more. So that we look forward to having you many, many more times on here, Matt. We'll be in touch. That's for certain. Busy calendar that is to come for certain. Mitch, as always, mate, lovely having you on here. You keep things real, you keep things measured, which again is why people love having you on the show. Mitch, listen, I think, again, there's a tint of real positivity whenever you come on here. I know you're always looking for more of the upsides rather than the downsides. But when you look at the 5 games Spurs have had so far this season, 6 if you include that Carabao Cup, which I'm sure you don't want me to remind you of, what is achievable this season? Have you changed your mind about ambition for what Spurs can and can't achieve?
Absolutely not. And my main reason for that is it could click at any time, because the big problem for Spurs so far has not been being on the front foot in games. It has not been, getting into areas and getting into the final third of the pitch. It's been sticking the ball in the back of a net. Mm-hmm. And that can change very, very quickly. And hopefully it changed after yesterday's game. So if the goals start flowing, and hopefully when the goals start flowing, I'm all in, Ricky. I'm all in until it's impossible. I was mere seconds away from total head loss on Wednesday night. Total head loss. Yes, I'm sure you were, Ricky. I know how passionate you are about the Carabao Cup.
Oh.
But
I know that's a bit insane, but you're right.
But we're still in it. The Carabao Cup, we're still in it. Europa League is about to start. It's going to be, I'm going on Thursday. It's my first game of the season I've been able to get to. So I'm absolutely buzzing for that. Even if it is at home against Carabao, it doesn't bother me. And the Premier League, I'm sort of sitting here and accepting the Premier League will be what it will be. We're going to have some tough games across the season. We're going to have some really good performances. At the end of the day, and I don't expect everybody to agree with me on this. At the end of the day, we'll finish where we finish in that. I just want us to have a go in the cups. I all 3 of them, FA Cup when it starts, Carabao Cup, Europa League, just I need something from them in one of those competitions at least, because it's been too long, mate. And I feel like I say this to you every single time I'm on the show, and I will continue saying it. But it's been too long. We need to see something. It's I don't want to put a negative spin on what I've tried to make sound positive to sort of sign off. But the fan base is perhaps becoming a little bit more divided over recent weeks and months. There are I see the little arguments going on social media. We've talked about the Brennan Johnson stuff. We need something to unite us, and what better way to do that than winning something, and then everybody's on the same side. So that I'm going to stick with what I said at the start of the season, and I still think we're capable of winning one of those cup competitions for sure.
Mitch, you always keep it real. Where can people find you keeping it real on a more frequent basis?
Yeah, so over on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it these days, over on YouTube these days as well, with the channel doing all sorts over there. So feel free to come and check me out. And likewise, if you see me at the game on Thursday or any time in the near future, feel free to come and say hello. I'm always willing to chat to people. So yeah, I appreciate you having me on, Ricky. It's been a great show with a great panel as well. And I've enjoyed every minute of it, as I always do.
Top man. Mitch, we'll see you very, very soon. Surely to close off, I've seen a lot of comments saying on here that a Spurs talk show and Last Word on Spurs collab is something people know could exist. And I can't wait. So listen, we'll see what comes of that. Listen, mate, you've got a lot to go for in terms of getting stuff sorted with you. And like I say, we're humbled and blessed to have you on it tonight, mate. Because like I say, it's an absolute pleasure. It's only been twice, but it feels like so much longer, mate. And again, just the natural chemistry you have with people is, I think, one of the beauties of platforms like this, because you strike up, relationships with people that, you've never met, but in a weird way, it feels like you've known them for such a long time. So that's all the kudos, mate, to what you do over what you do on your side. And again, the amount of love I've got to say, Matt, has been in for you tonight. It's been absolutely incredible. So when you are back on your feet, they're waiting for you, mate. They're waiting for you in the park. They're waiting for you with Bugsy. And we're looking forward to make more.
You know what, mate? You know what? First and foremost, I haven't had the chance to say it to everyone in the comment section or generally the people that leave comments in my videos. Like, thank you to everyone for the well wishes and that, because it's the toughest period of my life. Like 100%, it's ongoing. It's a nightmare every day. It's 23 hours a day. I'm barely sleeping. It's horrible. But the well wishes of the people in the comment section is absolutely phenomenal. I mean it from the deepest part of my heart. Like, thank you. Ricky, I barely know you, mate. I've never met anybody as amazing with your choice of words as you are. You're such a lovely legend of a lad. I can't wait to get to know you better over this period of time. Once I am, and we're doing regular things, mate, it's going to be a beautiful, beautiful chemistry. I know it is. I love your channel's fantastic. Your show that you've created is it's the blueprint for anyone who wants to get into media. Go and look at Ricky Sachs and how he does it. It's absolutely sensational. And Mitch and Simon, massive fans of yours in both of your own kind of various little departments of what you're doing in media as well, and content. Guys, it's been a wonderful evening, and it's been a lovely distraction from my struggles. So thank you again, Ricky, for putting it together, and I can't wait to get this stuff behind me at some point and then focus back on Tottenham 100%.
Bless you, mate. Can't thank you enough. I will tell you, Sean, that's what 10, 15 years of marriage does to you. You just end up saying the right things and doing the right things. And what I've learned in life a lot is, if you just say yes, probably this is not a good time for everyone. Saying yes makes life a lot more easier. Happy wife, you'll get there eventually for the people out there. But Sean, can't thank you enough, mate. And likewise, mate, can't wait, like I say, for more and more to come. But listen, from the brilliant, what a debut, Simon Yemane. Simon, thank you so much. Mitch Fretton, Mitch, thank you. Look forward. Go and say hello to Mitch on Thursday. Don't be shy. He doesn't bite. Go and say hello to Mitch on Thursday. I just hope you're not cutting him on Thursday. It's getting that bad. Won't be able to see a good start to the Europa League campaign. And from, again, the wonderful Sean Butler. Sean, we'll be back with you very, very soon in our lives. We can't wait for that. Bugsy the dog and more. From us all here, please, guys, keep safe, keep well. As always, come on, you Spurs.